The Han's engine isn't just firing, it's exploding. Yu Fu cracking open that river route is huge, but instantly conjuring 4,000 troops with Shenbi Nu and stamped armor. The logistics are insane. Jiang Xuan's culture shock is the perfect lens. The food variety alone speaks volumes about Han power, let alone the schools. It highlights the vast gap, systemic strength versus tribal grit. Then the chief unveils his plans, canals, step cities, and the crucial need for coal to fuel their industrial ambitions. His justification for the army, framing it as necessity driven by Yu Fu's discoveries, is masterful. The dialogue with Jiang Xuan was riveting. That whole mouthpiece argument and the chilling anecdote about the unfilial son. Wow. It's a stark vision of progress demanding sacrifice. This force isn't just for show, they're building an empire. And the philosophical groundwork is being laid just as surely as the barracks. Who stands a chance against this calculated momentum? After a whole lot of passionate persuasion, you finally managed to get Jiang Xuan to understand your grand vision. Stick with me, buddy, and you'll eat well, securing a bright future for generations to come. But mere talk alone clearly hadn't completely won the old fellow over. His limited horizons constrained his imagination. No matter how grand a picture you painted, he hadn't seen it, so he couldn't feel it. You weren't worried, though. His people were going to spend the winter at the Han tribe settlement anyway, only heading back in the spring. With a wave of your hand, you declared, "Forget that guest house place, it's too impersonal. Arrange 2 small courtyard residences for them directly. Keep them well-fed and comfortable. Let them have an immersive experience of the good life in the Han tribe." Of course, letting them eat and drink for free could easily attract gossip. You quickly arranged work for them. While the ground wasn't frozen solid yet, they could start by reclaiming wasteland outside the settlement and learning our advanced farming techniques. Once it got too cold to work the fields, they could head over to the livestock farms, shovel some manure, help with feeding, and learn the scientific methods for raising pigs and cattle. There were wages for work, 20 yuan a month. It wasn't much, but since the tribe covered food and lodging, it was enough to buy cloth shoes, clothes, snacks, and trinkets. Issuing wages served 2 purposes. Firstly, to silence any potential gossip, and secondly, to let them experience firsthand the wonders of this thing called money, and familiarize themselves with the rules of the game here in the Han tribe. Jiang Xuan was quite satisfied with this arrangement. Learning skills was what mattered. Getting among the masses was good. He could see how ordinary people lived. After all, even if his entire tribe merged, not everyone could become elites. Most would still be common folk. You knew perfectly well what you were doing. They could learn all the farming and animal husbandry they wanted, but touch the manufacturing department? Not a chance. Core technology would wait until they were officially one of us. Just as things were settled, Jiang Xuan asked another question. "Han leader, you keep mentioning commoners. Beixing, what exactly does that term mean?" You took a sip of tea, not even lifting your eyelids. "Simple. Everyone in our Han tribe is called a commoner. We have people here from all corners of the land, many tribes, many surnames. We need to distinguish them to avoid intermarriage within groups. Otherwise, things would get chaotic. Now that you Zhang clan people are here, it's the same. You'll use the surname Zhang plus a given name. All these people with different surnames are collectively called commoners, understand?" You added casually, "Of course, there's also the whole system of merits and ranks. Want to learn about it? Go audit the classes at the school. The Book of Han Rights explains it clearly. As a leader, surely you don't need to shovel pig manure alongside them." Unexpectedly, Jiang Xuan shook his head like a rattle drum. "School is good, but I have to leave in the spring, so I won't learn much. How about I follow you? When you have time, you can just explain things to me." You nearly spat out your tea. "Follow me? Brother, I'm very busy, okay? The military camp, shipbuilding, coal mining, coke smelting. Where would I find the time to chat with you every day? Go to the school. I'll give you a set of books, even provide brushes, ink, and paper. Go learn to read." This clinginess. You groaned inwardly. I can't shake him off, can I? Beside you, Yu Fu shot you a look that screamed, "See? Told you he'd be difficult," filled with the weary wisdom of someone who's been there. Seeing you practically pushing him away, Jiang Xuan quickly backtracked. All right, I won't follow you constantly. How about you let me see the Han tribe's soldiers first? I'll go to the school and learn to read right after I get back. I promise I won't cause any trouble. He was intensely curious about your rumored army. You glanced at Yu Fu, then at Jiang Xuan's expectant face, feeling utterly exasperated. Fine, so he just wants to see the army? Perfect. A chance to flex our muscles, stage a little military parade deterrence? Isn't that what modern nations do? Fine, you relented. You can come with me to the military camp, but you only look, no questions asked. Even if you ask, I won't answer. If you agree, then follow me. I'll arrange your people as we just discussed. Anyway, you added mentally, the raw recruits have just started drilling in formation. They haven't even been issued uniforms. What can he possibly figure out when he can't read a word? Other than the large numbers and slightly better discipline, he won't see anything. Jiang Xuan immediately nodded like mad. No problem. I guarantee I'll be a qualified spectator. He turned and instructed the man beside him, Jiang Yong. Yong, I'm going to the military camp with the leader. You listen to the arrangements, get settled in and learn farming properly. I'll be back in a few days. With that, he trotted eagerly after you out of the administration building. You really hadn't been bluffing him. The military supplies had arrived long ago. If it hadn't been for meeting him, you would have been on your way to the military camp first thing in the morning. A long convoy crowded the street, four-wheeled carts covered with thick straw mats, each pulled by two sturdy draft horses, lumbered, towards the west gate. Just as the convoy cleared the city gates, the thunderous sound of hooves erupted behind them, making the ground tremble. Whoa! Over 1,000 tall steeds, their coats glossy, all carefully selected war horses, a completely different league from the cart-pulling nags. These were the prized treasures destined for the cavalry. You calculated mentally, 2 cavalry units, averaging 3 horses per man. Extravagant. But it couldn't be helped. Without cavalry, you were fated to be attacked. Just thinking about those humiliations in history. We absolutely must have them. Fewer men, fewer horses for now, so focus on elite quality. In the future, even the infantry will damn well ride horses for travel. Fortunately, once the new city on the grasslands was established next year, good horses and cattle would be available in abundance, wouldn't they? The future looks bright. Jiang Xuan couldn't ride, so he could only jounce along on one of the supply wagons. Watching the dark mass of horses behind them, the uniform rhythm of their iron hooves seemed to pound directly on his heart. So many animals. Just the horses alone outnumbered his entire Jiang clan. How strong must this army be? Jiang Xuan's heart filled with both anticipation and a touch of fear. What bewildered him even more was the large group trailing behind the horse contingent, slow-moving antelopes, sheep, and even grunting pigs. Although larger than later domesticated breeds, they looked utterly insignificant next to the tall war horses. Overcome with curiosity, he couldn't help asking the driver beside him, "Brother, these sheep and pigs, what are they for?" The driver grinned, revealing white teeth. "Oh, them? The leader brought those to reward the officers and men." "Reward the officers and men?" Jiang Xuan looked blank. The phrase was new to him. "That's right," the driver said casually. "It's like giving perks to the soldiers, improving their meals, meat to eat." Jiang Xuan's jaw nearly dropped onto the wagon bed. What the Han tribe's soldiers actually get to eat meat, and whole herds of it. What you brought this time was far more than just pigs and sheep for the pot. Reports from the military camp indicated the barracks were mostly finished. Basic training was complete, and the supplies from Ruyang Commandery had arrived. With everything ready, you finally set off in grand style. The distance from Hanyang City to the valley outside Fuma Pass was only about 50 li, not far. Your supply train, consisting entirely of carts and horses, moved swiftly. Setting out in the morning, you arrived just past mid-afternoon. When passing Fuma Pass County town, Jiang Xuan received another shock. There was another town so close. To Hanyang City? The convoy didn't enter the town but skirted around it, passing through the northern Barbican. Once out of the mountain pass, the view opened up dramatically, and the military camp lay right before them. Unseen for a month, the camp had transformed. The wooden stockade walls were reinforced, and a vast expanse of adobe barracks had sprung up like bamboo shoots after rain. The granaries and stables also looked quite proper. The entrance gate was, even more imposing. 2 sets of large gates flanked on each side by 2-story earthen blockhouses, with cheval de frise blocking the path between them. The sentries at the gate stood ramrod straight, full of vigor, although they still wore their old clothes, and held, well, iron shovels meant for labor. The raw recruits, having finished their drilling and built their new quarters, had long been gazing eagerly towards the horizon for the equipment you promised, waiting anxiously day and night. Today, they had finally waited long enough for your arrival. However, no matter how happy the sentries at the gate felt inwardly, they didn't dare open the gates casually. Inside the camp, military law reigned supreme, far stricter than the Han. Laws outside, especially concerning entry and exit, where the rules were extensive. Things had been less formal during the initial setup, but when you left, you had laid down the law. Unless someone arrived bearing your personal sword, no one could enter the camp without authorization, let alone mobilize troops. Therefore, even though it was you yourself arriving with your sword, the sentries still had to call an officer from inside to verify your identity. You waited patiently at the gate, not the least bit annoyed. You had set the rules yourself after all. Besides, things would improve soon. This time you had brought the official seal, command tokens, tiger tallies, and military banners. Once the troops were selected and ranks formally assigned, everyone would have proper credentials. Before long, Ying Rui and Shui Tu came running out like rabbits. With such a commotion at the gate, there was no need for a sentry's report. They had seen it long ago. Knowing it must be you, they hurried out to welcome you. Greetings, leader. Reaching the gate and seeing it was indeed you, they immediately ordered the gate opened and bowed in salute. All right, rise. You didn't dismount, just made a motion to help them up. It's getting late. Get the supplies moved into the camp first and make sure everything is accounted for before dark. Yes, sir. Please enter the camp, leader. Acknowledging the order, the two escorted you inside. Jiang Xuan, that fellow, was indeed behaving himself. Since you told him not to speak, he remained utterly silent, his curious eyes just darting everywhere, wishing he could engrave the entire camp into his memory. Leader, you're finally here. The brothers have all been eagerly awaiting you, Ying Rui said cheerfully, walking beside you. They're eagerly awaiting this batch of supplies, aren't they? You pointed at the soldiers who were currently heaving supplies with gusto, their faces beaming. Look how happy they are. Heh heh, Shui Tu chimed in from the side. The leader sees clearly. These lads have been dreaming of equipment for more than a day or two. They worked incredibly hard building the barracks, all hoping to get it done quickly so you'd come. What, are you eyeing it too? You glanced sideways at Shui Tu's cheeky grin, curious. Shui Tu was one of the Han tribe's earliest regular army officers, serving as deputy squad leader when Shu Da was squad leader. He counted as an old guard. Later, Shu Da was posted elsewhere, and Shoya went on a diplomatic mission, leaving him as the only remaining senior figure in the military leadership. Although the forces had become somewhat dispersed later, he was still a seasoned veteran who had seen action and was fully equipped. Why would he be envious of things meant for raw recruits? Leader, I heard. There's newly forged iron armor this time and divine arm crossbows. Shui Tu didn't hide it, his eyes shining. That's good stuff. I haven't even seen one yet. Oh, so that's what you're after. Realization dawned on you, followed by mild exasperation. You won't be shorted on armor, rest assured. Not just the new recruits, but your 100 or so veterans will all swap their leather armor for iron. As for the divine arm crossbows, you're a commanding officer. What do you need that for? Still thinking of personally joining the fray as an archer? Go study command properly. Hearing this, Qianniu scratched his head with a sheepish grin. Having the leader command is enough. You give the order, I guarantee I'll be the first to charge. No matter the enemy, I promise to take them down for you. That command stuff, I don't know how to do it. Why bother learning? Your expression hardened. Wipe that grin off your face. I'll be checking your homework later. See how many characters you've learned. At these words, Qianniu's face immediately fell, resembling a bitter melon, and he didn't dare utter another sound. Entering the command post, you first gave it a quick scan, finding no signs of shoddy work, before lifting the curtain and walking into the main hall. Instantly, your gaze was captivated by a huge object in the center. A massive sand table. It had to be 3 meters long and wide, resting on wooden posts with a large wooden frame on top. Inside, earth and stones were piled to depict mountains and rivers, meticulously simulating the entire territory of the Han tribe, including the surrounding areas explored by Yu Fu. This thing could be called the Han tribe's most intuitive, strategic map to date. Although you had ordered it made, this was the first time you saw the actual object. Previously, you only had maps, and trying to set up something this large in Hanyang City proved impossible due to lack of space. Jiang Xuan, following behind, was so astonished his eyes nearly popped out. It was the first time in his life he had seen the complete picture of the Han tribe's territory. On the sand table, the location of each city was marked by a fired clay model made to scale. Rivers and lakes were distinguished by different colored earth, making everything clear at a glance. Well done, you praised sincerely, looking at the sand table. Afterward, you led the group out of the command post. While the soldiers were still diligently counting the supplies, you first strolled through the newly built barracks to check their quality. Then came the granaries, stables, wells, inspecting each one in turn. By the time you finished your rounds, the items you brought had been mostly inventoried. Of course, they were only logged into storage, not yet distributed. You led everyone directly to the reviewing stand on the drill ground, preparing to observe the training results of these raw recruits and give them a talking to. Beat the drums. Assemble, you ordered. Let me see how the training has gone this past month. Ying Rui and Qianniu exchanged glances, their eyes filled with confidence. A guardsman immediately picked up the drumsticks and beat the assembly drum. These drum beats were also coded. Different rhythms, and where the drum was struck represented different commands. Hitting the drum head versus the rim produced different sounds and meanings. Dong, dong, dong. Da, da, da. The urgent rhythm of the assembly drum echoed through the camp, like a summons they couldn't ignore. The soldiers, who had been chatting in small groups just moments before, reacted almost instinctively upon hearing the familiar beat, sprinting towards the drill ground. Before the first round of drumming was even finished, those closest had already dashed onto the field, finding their positions by muscle memory and standing firm. The instructors, clad in armor, moved even faster, arriving ahead of time, yelling at the top of their lungs for their soldiers to fall in. Once everyone arrived, they immediately began dressing the ranks and counting off. Before the third round of drumming ended, everyone except the drummer and the sentries on duty was standing silently in formation, awaiting instructions. The soldiers had long become accustomed to this. They had no choice. Being slow to assemble meant facing the military baton, which hurt far more than their mother's slaps. Military law was unforgiving, harsher than the Han laws. After a month of this, hearing the drum, their legs moved faster than their brains. It had become instinct. On the reviewing stand, you had been mentally counting the seconds since the first drum beat. You were reasonably satisfied with the assembly speed. Next, you scrutinized the neatness of the formation. Straight lines horizontally and vertically, no major flaws. You breathed a sigh of relief inwardly. It seemed the basic training had been handled well. Although the motley collection of clothes detracted from the overall visual effect, That wasn't their fault, as the new uniforms hadn't been issued yet. The speed is acceptable. You nodded, giving another order. Run through the usual drill maneuvers. Just standing pretty was useless. If they couldn't even tell left from right, it would be a joke. Yes, sir. Qianniu acknowledged the order, turned to face the thousands below, took a deep breath and bellowed, "Attention! By squads, commence drill maneuvers." The recruits below immediately started moving under their respective instructors' commands. Quick march, mark time, halt, left, turn, right turn, double time march, 1, 2, 3, 4. These familiar commands, these familiar movements were all fine traditions you had directly implemented. It looked simple, but it was exceptionally effective for cultivating discipline. The goal was to train soldiers until their bodies reacted automatically to commands. Only then was it considered adequate. Moreover, drilling formations was even more crucial in ancient times than modern ones. Modern drilling is mainly for discipline. Ancient drilling, besides discipline, was the foundation for deploying battle formations. Without it, battlefield tactics were impossible. Watching the soldiers below move in unison following their instructors' commands, you nodded with satisfaction. So far, you hadn't seen anyone turn the wrong way, and their shouts were loud. It just lacked imposing. Momentum lacked that bristling, killing aura of a true military spirit, but that couldn't be rushed. It required ideological education, and more importantly, the baptism of blood and fire. For raw recruits who had never been on a battlefield, achieving this level was already quite good, especially since their main task recently had been infrastructure construction. Limiting training time. Once all the drill maneuvers were completed, you beckoned to Qianniu beside you, signaling him to have the soldiers reform ranks and prepare to listen to your address. Eyes, right, dress. At the command, the soldiers adjusted their positions with small shuffling steps, quickly standing ramrod straight. Eyes, front, stand at ease. Correction. The last command before listening to a speech would typically be stand at ease or just remain at attention, but li ding means halt or stand fast. The previous one was li ding after marching. Let's assume the intent here is to bring them to attention facing front. The previous sequence ended with marching, then halt, so they are standing at attention. Reforming ranks means dressing the lines, then facing front. So eyes right, dress, eyes front. Li, ding, might be a final halt, command to signify the end of the drill sequence before the speech, ensuring stillness. Let's stick with halt. Stand fast. Halt. The gazes of all the recruits focused sharply on the reviewing stand, on you. Their eyes filled with anticipation. Everyone knew. The barracks were built, the supplies had arrived. The leader's visit this time must be for selecting soldiers, assigning branches and issuing equipment. They had all seen with their own eyes those 1,000+ magnificent war horses and those dazzling weapons, armor, new clothes, and shoes. What goodies they might receive would depend on this very moment. Beside you, Jiang Xuan had been wide-eyed the entire time, watching everything as if observing monsters. His mind was in turmoil. My goodness, several thousand able-bodied men doing nothing but gathering here to be soldiers. And the Han leader constantly complains about lacking manpower. Aren't these people? Wouldn't it be better to have them farm or build houses? Why let them stand idle? But then a deep chill ran through him. The fact that the Han tribe dared to do this meant they could afford it. Afford to support so many idle hands. Moreover, such a professional army, completely freed from production, equipped with the fine weapons that had just arrived. How terrifying would their combat strength be? His own 2,000+ Jiang clan members would likely hardly be enough to give these soldiers a real fight. With over 4,000 pairs of eyes fixed squarely on you, Ying Rui timely handed over a brass loudhailer. You cleared your throat, stepped to the front of the reviewing stand, and your voice, amplified by the loudhailer, carried clearly across the entire drill ground. Soldiers of the Great Han, your performance just now was very satisfactory. This Past month, you not only built the barracks but also kept up with your training. I am very pleased. Now, in my capacity as the leader of the Han tribe, I declare that you have become true soldiers. A wave of jubilation instantly swept through the ranks below. The leader himself had spoken. Did that mean it was time to issue equipment? Sure enough, your next words made their hearts tighten. However, this is just the beginning. Next, you will undergo even harsher training. You must not only be disciplined, but also capable of winning battles. I know you're all thinking, about that new equipment. No problem, you can have it. But before that, every single one of you must pass a strict assessment. Also, I warn you, do not discriminate against any type of soldier. Sword and shield soldiers, spearmen, halberdiers, archers, and crossbowmen, cavalry, in our Han tribe, there is no distinction of high or low status. The equipment and weapons are also comparable. They are all good quality. Therefore, during the assessment, I want to see the real you. Don't try to cheat just to become a certain type of soldier. That will not only harm yourself but also endanger your brothers in arms. Take those horses, for example. I know many of you want to be cavalrymen, but if you're not suited for it, if you drag down the training, if during battle your comrades have to divert their attention to protect you because of your incompetence, they might even lose their lives for you. Don't think I'm just trying to scare you. Be responsible for yourselves, for your comrades, for your families. Think about it. If your wrong choice harms others and yourself, what will happen to your wives and children back home? Etch this into your minds. All right, enough idle talk. Besides selecting soldiers today, I'm also here to reward everyone. I know you've worked hard this past month, and usually don't eat very well. Did you see those pigs and sheep earlier? They're for your extra meal. Here's the plan. Shortly, by squads, you will have your height and foot length measured and receive your new uniforms. Then, heat water and bathe. Wash yourselves thoroughly. Tomorrow you change into new clothes. After bathing, dinner will be served. Squad leaders, take your men to get their uniforms. Hearing this, the soldiers below had mixed expressions. Your words about troop types having no hierarchy and that making the wrong choice could lead to death struck a chord. Many indeed had little schemes brewing, hoping to bluff their way through the assessment, but now it seemed unlikely. Although the Han tribe was large, its population was still far from that of your era. Your prestige as the leader was quite high, especially in the eyes of the young, where you were practically an idol. In 5 years, you had grown a small tribe of dozens into a large one of tens of thousands. Who wouldn't respect such capability? Therefore, most people believed what you said. Of course, it takes all kinds. There would always be some troublemakers who didn't take your words seriously, still thinking they could muddle through the assessment tomorrow. Unfortunately for them, they didn't know the assessment items yet, so they could only wait and see. However, upon hearing they could get new clothes today and eat meat tonight, everyone brightened up again, faces beaming. The squad leaders immediately sprang into action, leading their respective squads to get measured. With the foundation laid by the previous drilling, the scene was orderly. No one dared cause trouble. After all, today was full of good things. Nobody wanted to get beaten with a military baton at this critical juncture. The assessment was tomorrow. Causing trouble now would just be asking for it, wouldn't it? Several tables were set up in front of the reviewing stand. Beside them stood bamboo poles marked with gradations for measuring height, and on the ground lay wooden boards marked with gradations for measuring foot length. Soldiers lined up one by one, had their height and foot length measured, stated their names, and received brand new uniforms. Thanks to you, the transmigrator, Han tribe clothing and shoes had long incorporated sizing. It wasn't as obvious with clothes, but shoes had been produced according to size for a while now. Mass-produced items like military uniforms naturally used standardized sizing. Of course, common folk still tailored clothes individually at home. Receiving their new clothes and new leather boots, the soldiers were all smiles, refraining from loud chatter. After getting their items, they lined up quietly to the side. Only when an entire squad of 20-odd men had received theirs did they march back to their barracks in formation to prepare for boiling water and bathing. You had also specifically brought a batch of soap and arsenic. Yes, arsenic. Bathing. In water with a small amount of arsenic could kill external parasites and prevent infectious diseases. As long as the dosage was carefully controlled, it wasn't poisonous. With so many people in the military camp, disease prevention was a major concern. Fortunately, the strict discipline in the camp, along with well-planned wells and latrines, significantly reduced the risk of epidemics. You always believed that with poor ancient medical conditions, prevention was far more important than treatment. Maintaining cleanliness daily was better than taking medicine when sick. The military camp had dedicated bathhouses. From the outside, they looked like large warehouses, but inside, large pits were dug, lined with stones and bricks, and paved, with pebbles at the bottom. Outside the bathhouses, water boiled in large cauldrons and was carried bucket by bucket into the bathing pools. Others drew cool water from the wells to mix it to the right temperature. The military medics you brought added arsenic to the water and instructed the soldiers on its safe use. This substance wasn't normally kept in the camp. It was requisitioned only when needed to prevent accidents. Those who had finished bathing or were waiting their turn had already started slaughtering the pigs and sheep, preparing for the evening feast. Besides the meat you brought, the nearby Fuma Pass County town had also supplied vegetables. The vegetables weren't paid for with money, but exchanged for manure. The soldiers in the camp didn't farm, so the treasure from the public latrines was perfect fertilizer for the common folk. The vegetables grown were then supplied back to the camp, a form of indirect self-sufficiency. By the time everyone had washed up and begun wolfing down their food, a table was also set for you. Besides the main meal, you also had someone grill meat skewers, chili peppers grown by the Han tribe itself, and cumin obtained from the Shin tribe. These spices had long been promoted for cultivation, weren't expensive, and were affordable for ordinary people who could grow them in their own subsidiary plots. Jiang Xuan silently ate skewers beside you, marveling at how well the Han tribe ate, while mentally processing everything he had seen and heard that day. There were too many novel things, many of which he didn't understand. He wanted to ask, but remembered the earlier agreement and could only suppress it, feeling frustrated. Never mind, he thought. I'll watch for a few more days. The soldier's meal was also quite sumptuous, although not as luxurious as your grilled skewers. There was plenty of stew from large pots and meat broth, with rice and steamed buns as staples. The main courses were hearty dishes like pork and cabbage stew with vermicelli, and mutton stew with cabbage. You had brought the pigs and sheep. The vermicelli was a specialty of Ruyang Commandery, made from taro powder. Taro yields were high and rich in starch, but it didn't store well. You had introduced the later generation method of making vermicelli from it, which became very popular. Turning taro into vermicelli not only made it easy to preserve, but also allowed it to be used in dishes or as a staple food. Boiling a bowl with some meat broth was like eating noodles. However, the production was troublesome and labor-intensive, yielding low output, so commoners mostly ate it as a side dish. Making it wasn't difficult, just time-consuming and laborious. First, grind it into pulp, let the starch settle, then steam it into sheets, and finally cut it into strips. Another method involved extruding threads through a mold before steaming, resulting in the common round vermicelli. There was also the round cabbage initially introduced from the Lu tribe. Calling it cabbage wasn't quite right, nor did it resemble the bok choy you knew, but it had now become one of the Han tribe's main vegetables. Nothing went to waste, including the offal. Some was cooked into dishes, some stewed into soup. Of course, meat wasn't served at every meal. To supplement protein, the military camp often bought tofu from the Fuma Pass market. Cleanly washed and having eaten their fill, the soldiers were ecstatic. After cleaning up, each man received a new quilt, grinning from ear to ear. After finishing your meal, you assigned the bugler you brought to his duties. Starting today, Bugle calls would be used, initially just to familiarize the soldiers with the sounds. Once soldier selection was complete and units organized, more buglers would be trained. Besides bugles, there were other small items, like brass whistles. These weren't distributed yet. They would later be issued down to the squad leader level. Telescopes couldn't be produced yet. The small amount of crystal ore Yu Yi brought back wasn't even enough for experimentation, making mass production of glass impossible. That would have to wait until the coal mine was sorted out. As night deepened, silence fell over the military camp. Early the next morning, a clear reveille bugle call pierced the dawn, immediately followed by the urgent beat of the wake-up drum. Soldiers in the various barracks finally rubbed the sleep from their eyes and crawled out of bed. The morning routine was the same as usual. Assemble for morning run, return to wash up, eat breakfast, tidy personal affairs, then assemble for training. The only difference today was that all soldiers had changed into uniform crimson military attire and cowhide military boots. This single small change had an enormous visual impact. When you led Jiang Xuan onto the reviewing stand again to watch the soldiers run drills, you felt immensely thrilled and incredibly satisfied. Jiang Xuan, beside you, was profoundly shaken by the sight before him. Several thousand soldiers wearing identical crimson uniforms ran in neat formations around the vast drill ground. As they ran, they shouted slogans of 1, 2, 3, 4. The scene resembled a colossal red dragon churning on the field, the synchronized thud of their footsteps making the ground tremble slightly. Jiang Xuan couldn't help but sigh inwardly. My goodness, a troop like this, forget taking them into battle. Just standing them in front of the enemy would probably scare them witless. While not exactly a sea of people, calling it a river of people was definitely no exaggeration. Watching this majestic and imposing scene before you, a smile touched the corners of your lips. You wondered, could this army clad in crimson uniforms be considered the Red Army of this era? After the morning run, the soldiers returned to eat and tidy up. You, meanwhile, called Ying Rui and Shui Tu over to lay out the plan for today's soldier selection assessment. You had already devised 6 assessment items. First, barbell snatch, simplified version. Stand with feet apart, knees straight, bend. At the waist, grip the barbell and lift it to waist height. No limit on repetitions, continue until exhaustion. The more reps, the better. This movement mimics drawing a powerful kick-lever crossbow, primarily testing endurance. Who can fire more shots? Second, vision test. 5 head-sized white wooden placards with numbers 0 through 9 written on both sides. Someone stands at a distance randomly holding up a placard, and the test subject identifies the number. This is clearly for archers, crossbowmen, and future scouts. Good eyesight means seeing farther and shooting straighter. Third, obstacle course. Quickly navigate. High and low posts and a balance beam. Successful completion is rated good. Fastest time is excellent. This tests balance. Individuals with well-developed cerebellums get priority. Cavalrymen bounce on horseback and need to perform equestrian maneuvers. Poor balance is a non-starter. Sword and shield soldiers, holding a shield in one hand and a sword in the other, also require good balance and coordination. Fourth, thrusting wooden balls. A wooden board, 1/2 meter wide and 2 meters tall, is set up. 5 bowl-sized holes are drilled into it at locations corresponding to vital body parts, face, neck, both chests, abdomen, and filled with wooden balls. The test subject holds a 4-meter wooden pole and sprints from 20 meters away, thrusting the pole at any ball upon reaching the board. 5 attempts. The more hits, the better. This one is obviously tailor-made for spearmen. Fifth, striking. Bamboo poles. This is your invention. Find several bamboo poles of identical length, thickness, and node spacing. Paint each node a different color. One pole is mounted horizontally at shoulder height, with one vertical pole on each side. The test subject holds a 3-meter bamboo pole. its tip drilled and filled with sand for weight, painted white to simulate an iron-headed halberd. The examiner randomly calls out a color, and the subject immediately strikes the corresponding colored node with the white tip. This is primarily for selecting halberdiers. The halberd, capable of thrusting, pecking, and hooking, is your planned infantry superweapon. Historically, it was countered by the hook shield, guxiang. But currently, only you know the secret of the hook shield. As long as you don't produce them, the iron halberd is invincible. This test measures reaction speed and screens for color blindness, 2 birds with 1 stone. Speed, accuracy, and number of hits determine excellence. 6th, loaded cross-country. Run. Each person straps 4 sand-filled bamboo tubes to their front and 4 to their back, 8 total, and runs 10 kilometers. Formation isn't required. Only speed matters. The first to finish is the best. All soldiers must participate in all 6 assessments for a comprehensive evaluation. No one knows the specific standards required for each soldier type. Therefore, even if someone wanted to cheat, they wouldn't know which item to focus their efforts on. Furthermore, you played a trump card, telling everyone that those with outstanding overall scores would have the chance to become officers. That settled it. Who would dare cheat now? To become an officer, one had to show real ability and give their all in every single event. By the time you finished arranging the assessments, the soldiers had finished breakfast and tidied their barracks. The assembly drum sounded, and they gathered on the drill ground once more. Technical skill events were tested in the morning, physical endurance in the afternoon. Otherwise, starting with a 10-kilometer run would exhaust everyone, making subsequent tests impossible. The first assessment was the high-low posts and balance beam, also known as the plum blossom posts, and single-plank bridge. Dozen wooden posts of varying heights stood on the field, followed by a 10-meter-long, only 10-centimeter-wide balance beam, narrower than a palm. Jian Dun, a new recruit from Luoyang Commandery, had just turned 18. He was from the Zhenjiao tribe, one of the earliest groups to join the Han tribe. He used to herd sheep, then learned farming, married at 15, and was now a father of 3. During the construction of Luoyang City, he had witnessed the imposing Han tribe soldiers and felt incredibly envious, especially admiring the large shields and waist swords of the sword and shield soldiers, along with their shiny black armor. Unfortunately, he never had the chance to enlist. This time, with the army expansion, his age and number of children, 2 sons, 1 daughter, meeting the requirement of not conscripting men without sons, met the criteria, so he immediately signed. His reasoning was clear. Even if he died in battle, the death benefit was high. His eldest son would gain a rank of nobility, and the tribe would raise his children. If he earned merits, he could be granted nobility. Even without merits, the monthly military pay of 30 yuan, the same as a worker's, wasn't bad. The opportunities for gaining merit in the army were far greater than in other jobs. With these thoughts, Jian Dun came to the military camp, aiming to become an outstanding sword and shield soldier. But the assessment items before him left him a bit bewildered. What did these plum blossom posts and single plank bridge have to do with being a sword and shield soldier? Confused or not, didn't they say good performance could lead to becoming an officer? Then he had to give it his all. Jian Dun's squad was the first to be tested. He was in the middle of the line. When the squad leader called his name, he immediately responded and stepped forward. Jian Dun, step forward, receive your test number. Yes, sir. He walked to the examiner and received a bamboo slip inscribed with his name and the number 02. This was his test number. The squad leader first demonstrated the procedure. Run, jump onto the posts, traverse them quickly, run up onto the beam, sprint across. Although Jian Dun still didn't understand the purpose, he memorized the key movements. Then the soldiers began the test in numerical order. Some before him fell off the high-low posts. Others stumbled on the balance beam. Each person had 2 attempts. The examiner only recorded the results without commenting on quality. 0012, step forward for testing. It was Jian Dun's turn. His palms were sweating slightly as he went to the starting line. The junior squad leader came over, patted his shoulder, and repeated the same encouraging words he'd given the previous 11 men. Don't be nervous. Relax. Don't start too fast. Watch where you're going once you're up. Plant your feet firmly, arms out for balance. Better to be slow than fall off. On the balance beam, start slow and steady, then speed up once you're on. Do well. I have faith in you. Yes. Sir. Thank you, Captain. Jiang Dun took 2 deep breaths and charged forward. He ran, leaped onto the first post. Remembering the captain's words, he spread his arms, kept his eyes fixed on his feet, placing each step carefully, proceeding steadily. The posts varied in height, and several times he nearly lost his balance, but he managed to get through without mishap. He ran again, slowly jogging up the inclined plank onto the narrow balance beam. Once steady, he abruptly accelerated. The red paint markings beneath his feet flashed by, but the feeling of potentially falling off never left him. He struggled to maintain balance, but unfortunately, in the final meter he fell. Jiang Dun sighed helplessly and walked back to the start. The examiner asked, "Each person gets 2 attempts. The best result is recorded. Do you want to try again?" Hearing this, Jiang Dun's eyes lit up. Since they took the best score, falling off the second time wouldn't affect his result. Making it across would be best, but even if he didn't, it didn't matter. Why not try? Moreover, he had passed the high-low posts in one go and run 8.5 meters on the balance beam, which was already quite good compared to those before him. If he could do better the second time, maybe he really could become an officer. With this thought, Jiang Dun nodded without hesitation. "I want to try again." That Jiang Dun fellow was quite perceptive. Although he didn't possess any extraordinary natural talent, he learned quickly. The plum blossom posts and single plank bridge that had tripped him up earlier, he navigated smoothly on his second attempt. He passed the second assessment in one go. He traversed the high-low post steadily and dashed across the balance beam without pause. He received a good rating from the examiner, though he didn't know it himself. The score sheet was immediately collected by the squad leader, and none of the raw recruits were allowed to see it. Next was the second item, lifting the barbell, pure physical exertion. You hadn't wasted metal making barbell plates, nor did you have time to carve stone locks. Instead, you had carpenters make wooden boxes, filled them with sand and soil, and threaded a wooden pole through the middle, making them look like carrying poles. Faced with this straightforward test, the recruits actually felt more relaxed. They were all young men who didn't have some strength. It seemed much simpler than those wobbly wooden posts and beams. Jiang Dun thought so too, but he understood that this wasn't about speed, but repetitions, endurance. When his turn came, he didn't rush, lifting methodically, avoiding an initial burst of force. There was only one chance for the barbell lift. Everyone gave their absolute all. Even if given another chance, they likely wouldn't be able to lift it again. Jiang Dun lifted until his arms ached. His back felt like it was breaking, and his shoulders went numb, finally collapsing onto the ground after 127 repetitions. This score wasn't bad, but it wasn't top tier either. Within his own squad, 6 or 7 men had managed over 130 reps. Across the entire army, he had no idea where his score ranked. Feeling uncertain, the first squad moved on to the third assessment location, the vision test. Thankfully, this one didn't require exertion. Everyone was exhausted from lifting the barbells and needed a breather. A line was drawn on the test ground, and Jiang Dun stood behind it as ordered. Directly in front of him, tables were placed every 10 meters, 10 tables in total, with an examiner seated behind each. The squad leader first called his test number, 00 and 12, then waved a yellow triangular flag at the first examiner. The examiner, at 10 meters, understood and randomly held up a wooden placard with a number. Jiang Dun saw it clearly, 3, and shouted it out. The examiner nodded and waved a green triangular flag. The examiner at 20 meters held up the next placard, and so it continued, station by station. At 60 meters, Jiang Dun squinted for a long time, but honestly couldn't make it out and had to give up. The examiner at 60 meters raised a red flag. Finally, the chief examiner standing beside the squad leader recorded 50 meters, next to Jiang Dun's name. This result was neither good nor bad. The worst in their squad could only see 20 meters. After the vision test, their stamina had mostly recovered. The squad leader led them to the fourth test site, thrusting wooden balls. The setup was simple: a line on the ground, and 20 meters away stood several man-high wooden boards with embedded wooden balls. The task was to use a 4-meter bamboo pole, charge forward, and dislodge a ball. Any of the 5 balls would do. Since the setup was simple, several boards were erected, allowing 6 people to test simultaneously. Jiang Dun was assigned to the last position in the second group. He gripped the bamboo pole tightly, eyes fixed on the target ahead. At the squad leader's command, he surged forward. 20 meters passed in an instant. Running too fast left him, slightly breathless and unsteady. His first thrust went wide, hitting the wooden board between the top 2 balls. Seeing the other 5 men beside him all score hits, Jiang Dun sighed. Fortunately, he still had 4 attempts left. Unfortunately, he failed to hit all targets in the subsequent 4 tries. On the second attempt, still aiming for the top ball, he missed again. For the following 3 attempts, he learned his lesson and focused exclusively on the 3 more clustered balls below, corresponding to the chest and abdomen, hitting all 3. This both surprised and pleased him. However, even hitting 3 in a row couldn't undo the earlier misses. His total score was 3 hits. Jiang Dun was annoyed. He shouldn't have wasted time on those top 2 balls. The wooden ball thrusting finished quickly, and the first squad was led to the 5th test site, striking bamboo poles. This task wasn't particularly difficult, perhaps even simpler than thrusting the wooden balls. It involved using the weighted bamboo pole to strike the correctly colored bamboo node, according to the command, testing reaction speed and color recognition. Each person struck 10 times. After each strike, they retracted the pole, stood at attention, waited for the examiner to call a color, struck again within 1 second, then returned to attention to await the next command, repeating the process. Jiang Dun felt quite confident about this one. During the test, all 10 of his strikes hit the correct color. His reaction speed, however, was average, not top tier. With all 5 technical assessments completed, the squad leader led them back to rest. Go back, eat well, rest well. There's a physical fitness test this afternoon. It'll be tiring. Jiang Dun and his teammates nodded and obediently returned. On the way, they chattered excitedly, discussing the morning's assessments and speculating about which troop type they corresponded to. Some with good scores fantasized about becoming junior officers. Others with unsatisfactory results were glum. Meanwhile, back at the reviewing stand, you received an interesting report. There really was someone who couldn't distinguish colors. You personally brought some items for him to identify and discovered he wasn't fully colorblind, but color weak. Color weakness. You recalled encountering it during physical exams in your past life. It wasn't an inability to see colors, but seeing them as faded. Bright red appeared pinkish. Goose yellow looked white. Becoming a soldier was problematic. Although strong, he couldn't be formally enlisted. Even if forced in, he couldn't become an officer. Misinterpreting signal flags could lead to disaster, but the man adamantly refused to leave. He was in his late 20s, had a wife and children at home, wasn't worried about food or clothing, just lacked a noble title. He knew the military offered many opportunities for merit and insisted on staying no matter what. You thought for a moment and made a decision. Let him stay. As an army blacksmith, enlist him in the military registry, classifying him as logistics personnel. He could repair armor and crossbows, shoe horses, fix carts. Opportunities for merit were fewer, but not entirely absent, and he could learn a trade. After discharge, he could open a blacksmith shop back home and support himself. Hearing this, the color-weak man beamed, happily staying behind. News of this quickly spread through the camp. Many envied his chance to become a blacksmith in logistics. It wasn't fear of death. Those joining the army came seeking military merit and equipment. The main envy was his opportunity to learn a trade. The Han tribe was developing rapidly, and skilled artisans were precisely what was most needed. Only then did his squad mates realize he couldn't distinguish colors properly, jokingly nicknaming him Fake Blind Man. Within a single noon break, the entire camp knew about this fake blind man. With only one such special talent, emerging among over 4,000 people in the dull camp life, he naturally became a topic of conversation for a few days. The fake blind man himself didn't. Yuri, I might be color weak, but I get to learn blacksmithing. Can you? Go ahead and be envious. In the afternoon, after the lunch break, the 4,000 recruits assembled again, ready for the final assessment, the 10-kilometer loaded cross-country run. The drill ground track was huge, 4 kilometers per lap, large enough for several thousand men to practice battle formations. 10 kilometers meant 2.5 laps. Lacking precise timing tools, you simply had all several thousand start together, ranking them based on their finishing order. In your past life as a soldier, such fitness tests were routine. Ordinary units ran 5 kilometers. Back then, 10 kilometers was the starting point for you, and you'd even done 60-kilometer nighttime mountain marches. This 10-kilometer run on flat ground was nothing significant. Modern armies considered 20 minutes for 5 kilometers. Good. 18 minutes. Excellent. You wanted to time them, but lacking the tools, had to give up the idea. Thousands of men strapped on the sand-filled bamboo racks. At the sound of the drum, they took off running. Dust immediately billowed on the track. Thousands of soldiers in uniform red attire, bamboo tubes strapped front and back, chased each other, creating a scene both spectacular and somewhat chaotic. Those falling behind could only eat dust but desperately pushed forward. Yu Yingrui, Shui Tu, and Jiang Xuan watched from the reviewing stand. The outer track teemed with bobbing heads, while examiners on horseback supervised from the inner track. Tables were set up at both ends of the finish line, with several examiners responsible for recording the rankings. The first half lap was crowded. By the second half, the faster runners had pulled away from the pack. After 2, then 3 kilometers, the column began to stretch out, but with 4,000 participants, it still looked like a dense, dark mass. Jian Dun was in the leading group, not the absolute fastest, but he gritted his teeth and stuck close. He felt the bamboo tubes on his body weigh a ton, but he persisted. His dream was to be a sword and shield soldier. The squad leader had mentioned a catchphrase passed down from the leader. Wear the thickest armor, take the hardest hits. Sword and shield soldiers wore the thickest armor, carried the heaviest shields, and had to stand in the front rank to take the brunt of the attack. How could they manage without strength and endurance? Fueled by this belief, Jian Dun clung desperately to the leading group, refusing to fall behind. After 1 lap, some had already slowed to a walk. Others ran until they vomited, kneeling on the ground, retching. Personnel from the inner track immediately dragged away those who collapsed. The rest continued running. By the end of the second lap, the participants had clearly separated into several distinct echelons. Running at their own maximum pace, they had spontaneously formed groups, supporting each other, shouting encouragement as they moved forward. You didn't interfere. After all, this was the first time doing this. Later, when it became routine training, anyone daring to help each other would face punishment. However, for this assessment, carrying or piggybacking others was forbidden. The final half lap, the leading group had already opened a 1-kilometer gap over the second group and was a full 3 kilometers ahead of the stragglers. The difference was enormous. You couldn't help but sigh. It felt like over an hour had passed. In your previous life, running 10 kilometers in over an hour would have been shameful in routine training. Your elite unit's average time for a 10-kilometer loaded cross-country run on flat ground was under 50 minutes. Only mountain routes took longer than an hour. This batch of recruits really wasn't up to par. Even the fastest were so slow. Beside, Yu Yingrui, Shui Tu, and Jiang Xuan were dumbfounded listening to you. This was slow. They were running carrying such heavy loads. The leader's standards were impossibly high. Jiang Xuan in particular felt these soldiers were already incredibly capable and couldn't fathom why you still looked dissatisfied. Finally, after more than an hour, the various echelons gradually crossed the finish line. Many collapsed the moment they passed it. The examiners busily recorded the results. You quickly ordered Ying Rui and Sui to, "Quick! Get those lying down back on their feet. Make them walk around. Suddenly lying down after strenuous exercise can be fatal." Hearing this, they knew the gravity of the situation and rushed over to haul the collapsed soldiers back to their feet. The lives of so many new recruits were at stake. Ying Rui and Shui Tu didn't dare be negligent. They quickly dispatched men to get all the collapsed soldiers back on their feet, carrying those who couldn't walk directly back to the barracks. Once the results were recorded, you gave the order for the entire camp to rest. Let them play dead for the remaining half of the afternoon. After arranging patrols for the barracks, you gathered the examiners, the scribes you had brought, and began sorting the soldiers based on their assessment results. Long tables in the council hall were covered with spreadsheets detailing each soldier's performance across the 6 assessment items. A total of 160 result sheets represented the fate of 4,000 new recruits. You were responsible for setting the criteria. The scribes handled the screening based on scores. The goal: establish 2 Weisuo, garrison commands. 1 Weisuo comprised 1782, meaning 2 totaled 3564. What about the remaining 400 plus? Easy. Add a scout gu, squad company approx 155 men, to each Weisuo and assign the remaining few dozen to logistics. Sorted. First, select the cavalry. 2 gu, totaling 310 men. Criterion: balance. Directly rank them based on their balance beam assessment scores, from highest to lowest. The scribes rapidly counted heads, picking out the top 310 with the best balance. For fairness, the 2 Weisuo took turns selecting personnel. 1 for you, 1 for me, in an ABAB pattern. Neither Ying Rui nor Shui Tu had any objections. Next were the scouts. Also 2 gu, 310 men. The criteria were more complex. First, select from the top 500 fastest runners. Then from these 500, choose the 400 with the best eyesight. And finally, from these 400, pick the 310 with excellent balance. The allocation method was the same, taking turns. Besides cavalry and scouts, each Weisuo also had 10 regular infantry gu, 155 men each. Troop composition ratio: 30% sword and shield soldiers, 30% spear halberd soldiers, 40% archers crossbowmen. You were determined to maintain strong ranged firepower. Therefore, the archers crossbowmen were selected next. A total of 1,392 men for both Weisuo. Priority was given to those with good eyesight and high barbell lift repetitions. Swish, swish, swish. Another batch was selected and allocated alternately to the 2 Weisuo. Then came the sword and shield soldiers, 1,082 men. Criteria: fast runners, good endurance, high score in loaded cross-country run, and good balance. Continue screening down the list. Finally, the spear halberd soldiers, also 1,082 men. They had to be chosen from the remaining pool. Criteria: accurate, wooden ball thrusters, fast reaction time in striking bamboo poles. Selected from a highest score downwards. The spear var halberd soldiers required further subdivision. From each Weisuo, select the gu with the lowest overall scores to form long pike phalanxes. The pikes they used were a full 7.5 meters long. This weapon wasn't for dueling, but specifically for forming ranks to counter cavalry. The remaining 2 spear halberd gu in each Weisuo would be equipped with 3.5-meter iron halberds, fulfilling the role of traditional spearmen. All right, the regular troops were sorted. Finally, the 126 lucky ones remaining, those with the lowest scores across all categories, were evenly divided between the 2 Weisuo to serve as logistics soldiers. You and the group spent over 2 laborious hours finally completing the troop assignments. The next step was promoting officers. Select the top performers from each troop type, combining them with the existing veterans, a mix of old and new. The veterans had finally made it. The lowest promotion was to gu leader, equivalent to Shu Da's former rank. Of course, back then, the Han tribe only had 1 gu of regular troops in total. After reorganization, each Weisuo had 2,151 men. The extra personnel were the supreme commanders you directly appointed, promoted veteran officers, and civilian staff and logistics personnel you inserted, such as clerks, artisans, military medics, and so on. The final step, formally bestow the unit designations. Qianniu Guard, Qianniu Wei, total strength 2151. Subordinate units, cavalry, Gu 155 men, scout Gu 155 men, sword and shield soldiers 1 Guan, approximately 3 Gu, 541 men, spear char halberd soldiers 1 Guan 541 men, archers, crossbowmen 1 Guan, plus 1 Gu, totaling 696 men. Logistics Zongqi banner detachment, 63 men. Appointments. Former cavalry Zongqi leader Chai Duoduo, appointed Qianniu Guard commandant, military commander. Former archer Zongqi leader Tanjian, appointed deputy commandant. Former Fuma Pass County Magistrate Ying Rui, appointed Guard Sima, political commissar. Former Hanyang Commandery Penal Office Clerk, Zhongnian, appointed adjutant, staff officer. This configuration featured 2 veteran generals and 2 parachuted officials. The commandant managed combat, but had limited authority over troop deployment in peacetime. The Sima oversaw ideology, logistics, and discipline, holding the most power day-to-day, capable of checking the entire guard. The adjutant handled strategy and training plans. Your intention was to have them counterbalance each other, keeping firm control in your own hands. The Qianniu Guard's mission was deployment to the new city on the grasslands, responsible for construction and defense. Hence, Chai Duoduo, knowledgeable in cavalry, was chosen as commandant with Tan Jian, skilled in archery, as his deputy. Ying Rui, formerly a falconer, useful for intelligence, and county magistrate, experienced in administration and logistics, was primarily chosen because he was obedient, honest, and someone you trusted with troop deployment authority. The adjutant role was technical. Any intelligent civil official would suffice. Huben Guard, Huben Wei, organization and personnel identical to Qianniu Guard. Commandant, you directly appointed Shui Tu. You had different plans for the Huben Guard. After the upcoming war, this unit would transition into an engineering corps, specifically responsible for future infrastructure projects across various regions. Of course, when battles needed fighting, they still had to step up. The deputy commandant position was filled by promoting Hu Man Kang, the former sword and shield Zongqi leader. The adjutant role went to Shi Liu, the former spear Zongqi leader. For the crucial position of Guard Sima, you appointed Xue Dong Liang. Xue Dong Liang hailed from the Xue cave tribe. Prospecting and digging were his ancestral trades. After joining the Han tribe, you specifically cultivated him into a construction specialist. Xu clan members were now spread across major construction sites, all serving as key personnel. Xu Dongliang himself was a standout among the foremen, having overseen major projects like the Liuyang Commandery Docks, School, Shipyard, the Weishan Commandery Granary, and the eastern section of the Hanlu Grand Canal. Having managed thousands of laborers handling the logistics for the Huben Guard's 2,000-odd men, should be well within his capabilities. As for other skills, they could be developed gradually. There was no more suitable candidate for now. The personnel for Qianniu Guard and Huben Guard were finalized. You immediately had the scribes begin creating rosters. These were the military registers. Future distribution of pay, rations, weapons, and recording of merits and casualties would all depend on these books. Made in duplicate, one copy stayed with the Guard Sima, the other you took for archiving. Jiang Xuan had been silently observing everything. The assessment, troop assignment, appointments, roster creation. The entire process was complex, serious, and meticulous. He had truly witnessed the Han tribe's soft power. Handling so many, affairs would be utterly impossible for his Jiang clan. He also noted the power of Han characters. Everyone had a name, was registered, household registration, and upon becoming a soldier received military registration. who came from where they were going. Everything was clearly arranged and recorded. Without Han characters, this would be impossible. Han characters, what a good thing. Could the Jiang clan invent their own writing system? Basically impossible. The best way was to learn Han characters. But without joining the Han tribe, how much could they really learn? Half the afternoon passed in busy statistical work. The exhausted new recruits had recovered and were moving about in small groups. Some were busy with dinner preparations. Others peeked around trying to inquire about the results, asking which troop type they were assigned to, only to be naturally shooed away. The squad leaders declared, "Wait patiently. Tomorrow, assemble on the drill ground for troop assignment and equipment issue." Hearing they would receive equipment tomorrow sent waves of excitement through the crowd. After waiting for over a month, the time had finally come. But there was also anxiety, not knowing where they would be assigned. Some didn't care anymore. Those were the poor performers who felt they had no chance. The night passed amidst anticipation and unease. Early the next morning, after tidying their barracks, first came the assembly bugle call, followed by the assembly drum. Soldiers sprinted towards the drill ground, falling into formation as they had yesterday, their gazes fixed uniformly on you at the reviewing stand. But this time, you didn't speak, leaving the task of troop assignment to the commanders of the two Weisuo. With so many people, how long would it take if you shouted everything yourself? Shui Tu and Chai Duoduo stepped forward. Assignments were announced starting from the highest rank downwards. Officers were called first, received their banners, took their positions, and then the enlisted men lined up, preventing chaos. Shui Tu stepped forward and bellowed, "Where is squad leader Huben Guard of the 8th Squad?" Huben Guard, standing in the front rank, startled, then quickly reacted, stepping forward and responding loudly, "Present." "Huben Guard, fall out." Shui Tu boomed again. Huben Guard stepped out of the ranks, his heart pounding. Seeing their leader called away, the recruits under his command grew even more nervous. "Reporting, General. Squad leader Huben Guard of the 8th Squad reporting for duty. Awaiting instructions. Order. Effective immediately, Huben Guard is appointed Deputy Commandant of the Huben Guard, tasked with assisting in managing the combat. Fares of the Huben Guard, assume your post now. Receive the military banner." Huben Guard was stunned, his face flushing crimson. He, a mere Zongqi leader, had leaped straight to Deputy Commandant. Not daring to delay, he quickly yelled, "Yes, sir," and stepped forward solemnly to receive the Huben Guard's military banner. The Huben Guard had 3 banners, the red banner with black characters and gold trim bearing the character Han, the national flag, the red banner with a black, embroidered tiger outlined in silver, the Huben Guard banner, and the red banner with black characters and no border bearing the character Shui, the commander's flag. Huben Guard received the silver-bordered banner embroidered with the fierce tiger. Then, head held high, one hand steadying the banner pole, he took his position at the front of the stand. Next, Shui Tu called squad leader Shi Liu of the 1st Squad, appointing him Huben Guard adjutant. Liu received the commander's flag and stood on Huben Guard's other side. Finally, Sui Dongliang was called, appointed Guard Sima. He received the national flag and stood between the other two. With the top command appointed, the next level was the senior commanders of each major troop type, Guan commanders, deputy Guan commanders, and Guan Simas, roughly equivalent to battalion level. A Guan was composed of 541 men, overseeing 3 Gu plus 2 Zongqi. The archers, crossbowmen had an extra Gu, directly under headquarters command as a guard unit. 9 Guan-level officers from the 3 main troop types were called out, presented with banners, and stood holding their respective flags waiting for their subordinates to fall in. Further down were the Gu leaders, similar to company commanders, also with deputy leaders and Gu Simas. Besides the 9 Gu of the 3 main troop types, there were also the Guard Gu, Scout Gu, and Cavalry Gu directly, under Weisuo command, totaling 12 Gu and 36 company-level officers. These officers received their flags and also took their positions further back. Next were the zongqi leaders, similar to platoon leaders, with both leaders and deputy leaders. Each gu commanded 4 zongqi. This time, 96 platoon-level officers were called out directly. There weren't enough veterans. Half had been assigned to the Qianniu Guard. Therefore, at the zongqi level, selections began from new recruits who had excelled in the assessment. From the front, the Guan commander of the sword and shield soldiers, holding the appointment list, shouted loudly, "Jiandun, number 002 of the first squad, fall out." Jiandun froze. "Calling me? Zongqi leader? I'm becoming an officer directly? And a sword and shield zongqi leader? Commanding over 30 men, more than my original squad leader?" He could hardly believe it. While he stood stunned, a comrade beside him pinched his thigh, making him wince. "Go. On, they're calling you. You're a zongqi leader now, don't forget us brothers later." Jiandun finally snapped back to reality, grinned, and jogged forward, receiving a red-bottomed banner from the Guan commander. Instead of embroidery, the design was wax-dyed onto the fabric, a black shield with 2 crossed goose quill sabers. In front, imposing and formidable, Jiandun delightedly took the flag and stood in the back rank. He got the troop type he wanted and became an officer. He was practically ecstatic. Next came the Xiaoqi leaders, similar to squad leaders. A Xiaoqi consisted of 12 men, with 1 leader and 1 deputy. In combat, the leader and deputy each led 5 men, forming small battle units. You believed these small formations were very useful in the era of cold weapons, drawing inspiration from the Qijiguang army's large and small Mandarin duck formations and the tactics of W2 Japanese soldiers rallying around their sergeants during bayonet charges. With 2 leaders each holding a flag, troopers rallying to the flags could exert greater combat power. Once all 600 to 700 Xiaoqi officers were in place, names were called directly, assigning soldiers to each Xiaoqi. The 2,000-plus men on the drill ground were instantly divided up. The remainder, naturally, belonged to the Qianniu Guard. The Qianniu Guard's appointment ceremony was presided over by Ying Rui, following the same process as the Huben Guard, calling officers level by level, issuing flags, forming ranks, and finally assigning enlisted men. When the regular troops were all assigned, only about 100-odd recruits remained scattered on the drill ground, feeling quite dejected. They knew they had performed poorly yesterday. Many hadn't even finished the 10-kilometer run, and their scores in other events were also at the bottom. Now that the main forces were assigned, leaving only them, were they going to be sent home? Many began to feel disheartened. Just then, the 2 guardsemas produced lists again and started calling names. They swept up the remaining 100-plus men, dividing them evenly between the 2 Weisuo, each forming a logistics-reinforced zongqi. This logistics zongqi commanded 5 zhaoqi, making it even larger than a combat zongqi. The bottom-performing group ending up in logistics was unexpected for them. But on second thought, it wasn't bad. They weren't good at much else, but providing labor, carrying things, driving carts, cooking, mending, was certainly manageable. Someone suddenly remembered, right, that fake blind man is also in logistics, right? And he became a blacksmith. Does that mean we can also learn a trade? Huh? Logistics can learn trades? A logistics soldier nearby brightened up. Then I want to learn carpentry. After discharge, I'll go to the Luoyang Commandery shipyard. Shipbuilding carpenters earn really high wages. If I become a master craftsman, I'll be worth several men. But I'd need to learn to read blueprints. If I learned carpentry and became a master shipbuilder, that would be great. Yeah. So being a logistics soldier isn't bad after all. We can even have a trade when we go home. This arrangement is good. Just as the last batch of bottom-tier recruits finished being assigned and were murmuring amongst themselves, a new order came from the reviewing stand. Huben Guard, sword and shield soldiers, by zongqi, step forward and form ranks. Receive your armor and equipment. Qianniu Guard archers and crossbowmen. By zongqi, step forward and receive your armor and equipment. The clear commands rang out, and Jian Dun's heart leaped. Finally, time to get equipped. He wondered what kind of armor and weapons he would receive. Excitement surged.